Monsignor, we want to celebrate your 55 plus years in the priesthood.
Thank you.
And we thank you for being with us this evening on this. But you come from what I call the old school of priesthood.
Well, I guess I do. I wasn't ready to confess to that, but yes, I'm at the tail end of the old school. Let me explain where I fit in history. I arrived as a brand new priest at the Shrine of St. Therese. Monsignor Dowling was the pastor. Father Negro was the first assistant. I was the second assistant. And I arrived there saying Mass in Latin and doing everything in Latin. And when I was sent to my next assignment, I was saying Mass in English. So it happened right then, that little window of time. I was ordained in 1959, and we were saying Mass in English in 1963, 64.
How do you feel about the change from Latin to English or other languages?
Well, it's hard to even summing up feelings about it because it's just so much a part of us that it's hard to remember that we actually were saying Mass with our back to the people in Latin. It's hard to remember that. It's hard to believe it. And I feel great about it, to answer your question.
They don't, seminarians don't even learn Latin, I presume, now in the seminary.
Well, I don't know enough to answer the question about what's happening in all the seminaries. But I know that it's not a requirement, and I think some places are offering it, and others would say, well, you have to get it somewhere else. I know that the Archbishop of San Francisco wants the seminarians who are at Menlo Park to be able to say a Latin Mass when they're ordained. So they are training them there, and that's probably happening in other places too.
Now, you spent quite a number of years at various places. Give us kind of chronology of where you leaped from St. Teresa's Shrine.
I was at St. Therese till 1966, and I became the pastor of Parlier. Do you know Parlier?
I've been out there, yes.
You go out Manning Avenue on your way to Reedley, and oops, there's a little town right there. Right before Reedley. And there was another resident clergyman there. The Japanese priest and I were the only resident clergy in Parlier. And there was already a church and a rectory, a nice church and a nice rectory. And I loved being there. I loved that assignment. And as I said before, I left St. Therese, and I went there saying Mass in Spanish, not Latin.
Then you went to St. Anthony's of Padua, I understand?
Well, you're leaping way
I'm
ahead.
leaping. Okay, let's go back to the order here.
Because there's a big chunk of my life about to happen, I'm telling you. I was there till 68, and in the fall of 68, I went to Merced. And we still had a high school, a Catholic high school in Merced, and I was I was the chaplain and a teacher. I taught English and drama and public speaking. And then I started doing that at Merced College at the same time. And then I got a year off for good behavior. Bishop Donahoe, I told him that I was taking some summer classes here and there. And he said, oh, don't do that. Go somewhere and get a real degree. And so I went to the University of Louvain in Belgium in the fall of 1970. And I was there until 1971. It was a wonderful, wonderful time in my life. And
I imagine you learned German while you were there.
Well, no, I learned German way before that.
Oh, before that.
Yeah. But no, what you need in Belgium is Dutch and or French. But I learned German in my undergraduate years at my first seminary. My original training was at a school that taught German.
What about, now, when you were there, if I remember correctly, you were doing some studying and brought back a theory on what do you call it? My mind is going here.
Well, I called it shared ministry.
Shared ministry, that's what I was thinking about,
Yeah.
yes. How did that work? How did you work that out?
Well, the only way you can make anything like that work anywhere in the church is if the bishop is on board. You can't just start experimenting with things, on your own. The bishop has to be there. In fact, that's you might call it a law of sociology, that you can't change a part of a hierarchical order like the army or the military or the church or the prison system. They're all very similar. You can't change one part of it without changing the part next to it and the part next to it the other way. So they have to somehow come on board with the change. So when we were doing shared ministry in Merced, instead of a pastor and this geographical territory, we had 3 parishes in one large territory, and the priest took different roles in that, and that was the beginning of getting lay people. We hired the first paid youth director. We had an office, a lay person office manager in the church, and we did a lot of innovative things. Yeah, a lot of firsts there.
Terrific.
And it was quite interesting, and I was there until 1979, and that's when it was still Bishop Donahoe, and he asked me to take St. Anthony's as Monsignor Flood, who built the place, was leaving. He wasn't retiring, but he said enough is enough. And
that's a tough job to build a church.
It was a big church, big parish. And Monsignor Flood, who was one of the finest priests we ever had in our diocese, went to Dos Palos from there.
That's quite a leap.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's sort of like a quiet retirement village almost compared to where he was.
Compared to where he was, yeah. And St. Anthony's, of course, led the way to Holy Spirit. That was all part of St. Anthony's Parish. And St. Anthony's had grown so big that we were able to give Monsignor Logan a substantial number of names and addresses and phone numbers, and they all became his parishioners overnight. And it didn't hurt St. Anthony's at all. Yeah. People would say, "Oh, gee, how could you do that?" And wasn't that going to? It didn't hurt St. Anthony's at all.
But the city was moving north.
The city was
at that
booming.
particular time too.
Booming.
So had new people moving out into that area.
Right. It was wonderful.
Yeah. Looking back at your seminary for a moment, and looking at today's world of seminarians, which is quite different. I mean, it is tough today to find young people to get into the religious life.
Yes. You can imagine over the years I've gone through a lot of thinking about the seminary. I had some not so good feelings and not so good ideas about the seminary at one point. If you had caught me many years ago and asked me these questions, I would have had different answers. And then I sort of mellowed out, and I realized pretty early on that they were doing the best that they could at the time, but it was really tough. It was you left home in every year in September, and I went to school in Ohio and lived here in California. And so the next time my folks saw me was June. It was too expensive to go home at Christmas, not enough time. And that was 12 years. We went in high school. I was 13 years old.
It doesn't happen today.
No. To my knowledge, there aren't any high school seminaries left in the United States. There could be one or two somewhere, but I don't think so. So the normal thing became, well, you go to college seminary. Well, then that isn't normal anymore either, because young men are deciding at an older age, after they've already done something else and had a different kind of education, to now look into the priesthood. So then the church has to train them in theology, and in some cases get the philosophy that would be required to go with the theology. So it's a hit and miss kind of a thing. I don't know how the vocation directors do it, because they've got to tailor things for just about everybody who comes along. Find the right place for them, get them the help that they need. And
I remember in junior high school, I went to Catholic school. There were, they start talking to you then about possibly going to the seminary, and of course at high school would have been the next step, that you would have gone to a seminary at that point. But those days are gone forever.
Was a wonderful priest from New York named Father Phil Murnian, who's since gone to heaven. But I remember his talking one day about when he was in the 8th grade, and the pastor came in to the 8th grade classroom about April of their 8th grade year, and he said, Murnian and O'Malley and Johnson and Jones, see me after class. And they went over to the rectory, and he told them they were going into the seminary.
Just told them, huh? This is where you're going. Well, that's as good a method as any, I guess, if you're going to do that. Leapfrogging a little bit ahead, you have been in your lifetime privy to 8 popes.
You counted them.
I counted them, yes, I did. And from the time, of course, that you became a priest in 1959. Of those popes that you have had to look at and follow, etc., is there any ones that stick out? Of course, recently we had 2 become saints, we know that, but that doesn't mean that they may have been on your top list. Which ones impressed you the most?
Well, speaking of the saints, I was just completely taken up by John the 23rd, and he was the Pope when I was ordained. And I grew up under Pius XII. I grew up thinking that Franklin Roosevelt would always be the President of the United States, and Pius XII
would always
be the Pope. Quite a shock when they died. Pius XII died when I was a deacon. I was just about to be ordained. And we got the brand new Pope, who was truly wonderful. We could go on our whole conversation here about him, and the aggiornamento and the changes in the church, the opening the windows for the fresh air to come in. He did all that and gave us Vatican II. So he's my hero.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it had changed dramatically from when you were a student to when you were actually a priest and performing in the parishes.
It's probably, for someone who doesn't know this story, it probably doesn't even sound real that we went so radically different in such a short time. But we did. It was amazing.
What's your impression of Pope Francis?
Well, I think it's a little early for us to tell. I think you need a lot of years before you can rate a pope like that. I have no problem putting a number of stars next to John the 23rd. But everything looks pretty good about Pope Francis. He's a hero to millions and millions and millions of people, and he seems to be doing all the right things. I sort of hold my breath, that his health will be okay, and that he'll still be able to do what it seems he's intending to do. And that is, if he doesn't do anything else, he's shaking up the bureaucracy in Rome for the better. No question about that.
I think people looking from the outside at Rome always sees the glitter and the glamour and the gold and what have you of the papal, and he has sort of thrown that right out the window.
Out the window. Yeah.
Do you, as a priest, and others obviously embrace that that aspect of what he is,
Well,
what he's delivering?
I'm sure I speak for many priests when I say yes, we embrace that. But no, not everybody's all excited about Pope Francis. There are those who want to hold on to not only the way things have been before Francis, but there are still people who want to hold on to the way things were under Pius XII, before John the 23rd.
Well, why do some religious hang on to that? What is their gravity to not change?
Well, it's a concern, I think a genuine concern on their part that we're not throwing out the baby with the bathwater, that we're not doing something precipitous when we're making changes. And I for one, feel comfortable that we're not making precipitous changes, but I understand those who are afraid of it. I understand that. And it would be terrible if we lost something important in all of this. It would be terrible. I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah. Of course, Pope Francis recently, brought the Palestinians and the Israelis together for a talk and a prayer, etc. And do you see? And I know popes have done that over the years, but he seems to have jumped into it with both feet. Do you feel that that's the duty and the purpose of
the papacy?
Pope? Yes.
Yeah, if we get into the history books, you're going to find the popes sticking their noses into politics, at least through the Middle Ages and up until 16th, 17th, even maybe the beginning of the 18th century. Not always with happy results, and not always for the best of the church, and maybe even not always for the best of the people involved. And Francis' approach seems to be, okay, let's don't talk about treaties and let's don't talk about territory and who should have what. Let's pray. Why don't we pray like brothers? And let's plant an olive tree. I think that's supremely clever and very pastoral, even saintly of him to approach it that way. Everybody knows what he's thinking, fix that problem in the Middle East, but I'm not going to fix it. I want you to see each other as brothers and to at least stand on that ground for a day and not embrace each other, but accept each other. It's wonderful. It's very clever.
What do you think is the time, as you just mentioned, you were a young priest and right at the early part of the 60s. Looking back at the last maybe even 100 years, is there in your history and reading your history, where is that the biggest change that's come in the church, is that particular era?
Oh yeah. The seminary that I entered in 1947 was not the least bit different from the seminary that Monsignor Jessing founded in 1880. Just not anything about it was different. It was founded to train young men to be able to serve the German-speaking Catholics of the Midwest. And so they had to, most of the kids who went there already spoke German, but they had to take it formally. And they had to speak English half a month so that they'd learn English better. By the time I got there, of course, it was reversed. We all spoke English, nobody spoke German. So we had to take German to keep the tradition going. But by that time, even when I was in high school, by that time, there wasn't really a big calling for German-speaking priests in the Midwest. They had all assimilated by then. But we kept those traditions going, and it was not until after I was ordained and left the seminary that they started changing any of the curriculum. for the 20th century. I mean, it was still mid-19th century curriculum. Yeah. And I had a wonderful education. It was based on the European system.
The fundamentals.
Yeah. And not only that, you went to school from 8 to 5 on Monday and Tuesday and Thursday and Friday, and from 8 to 12 on Wednesday and 8 to 12 on Saturday. So you had Wednesday and Saturday afternoons off, and Sunday was the only full day you had off. But that was filled with first the little mass and then the high mass and then vespers.
Mm-hmm. So it wasn't a day off anyway. Right.
Also, you couldn't leave the campus.
Oh, okay. So you were there 24/7 then.
Yep.
Yeah. That type of thing, of course, probably wouldn't fly today at all.
I don't think so. Yeah. I don't regret it at all. I don't say, gee, what a waste of time. It was not a waste of time. Yeah. It was a pretty classy, formal education. Mm-hmm. You know, 6 years of Latin, 6 years of German, 4 years of Greek. I mean, that's the old school. That's something you don't find anywhere anymore.
The spinning off of that from priests to, of course, nuns and so forth, they have the same problem in trying to find women to take on the religious life. And is it the same type of finding women that have gone to college as you do in priests these days, finding women that aren't satisfied with the life that they have chosen, say, after college?
Didn't you just win an award for doing a show?
Well, I did that on the Norbertine Sisters, yes. And of course, those women, again, many of them are highly educated,
yes.
An attorney and lots of things in that particular area. So those particular nuns certainly have cloistered themselves, but quite differently from, of course, nuns that would be teaching or doing things here in the community.
My purpose in turning the table thing there was we need that. Mm-hmm. The church needs that. But the Norbertines don't want some vacuous, empty, unprepared, uneducated peasant girl coming in. They want people who have been properly trained as youngsters and have had good schooling and can bring something to the table for the Norbertines, and then can learn their wonderful ancient traditions there and live that life as mature adults and not little kids. Mm-hmm. That was, maybe that's what I'm trying to tell you. All of my contemporaries, and there aren't many of us left, I know, but we were kids. Mm-hmm. We were kids. We were little kids. And we didn't do a lot of really good socializing in the world, because it was this inverted little system that we were in. We had to learn a lot after we got out. Mm-hmm. A lot of rough edges had to be knocked off of us after ordination because we were in a cocoon. And that's never going to happen again. Right. And the other religious orders, they don't want uneducated women. They don't want little girls who haven't grown up yet. They don't want any of what we had before. They want people who can meet the demands of the religious life, which is tough.
Oh, yes.
And serve the church and serve the world according to the gifts that God gives them. And it's a wonderful thing. There aren't that many. The bottom line here is we used to have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of nuns everywhere, all over the place. Never going to have them again. And we don't, in case you haven't noticed, we don't have a lot of priests either.
That's true. What you just mentioned there, of course, the nuns used to be the basis of Catholic education. Yes. Obviously, that was I went through grade school and high school with the athletic director was a man, but outside of that, they were all nuns. Looking, and you've run some schools, as you've just mentioned. Catholic education today, what must it do to engage itself?
I wasn't ready for this one. Well, nothing needs to change about the mission of a Catholic school. What needs to change is the financing and how we're going to get there with the money. We don't need to invent Catholic schools. We've got them, we know how to do it, and we have wonderful people who can do it. We've got to find the financing, we have to find the investment for people to make in the future of Catholic education. There's no question about the good effect that Catholic schools have had on the church. There's no question. And I'm speaking from people who have objectively done studies on how do people behave when they go to when they graduate from the Catholic system. Well, they're much more involved, and they're ready to participate in the life of the church. And if nothing else, they've become friendly with the church personnel, and they know the give and take, and they know what it's like to be part of the family. But we don't have the money.
That's difficult at all levels of society today, is that the expenses are out of whack. When you go to college now, you walk out and you've got a student loan that's 50, 60, 70, or whatever, thousands of dollars to get that college education.
It's outrageous.
And I look back, and it didn't cost me that much to get mine, but I have grandchildren who it will cost that kind of money. So
there's I'm not going to, maybe you'll remember, there's a group of millionaire men and women on the East Coast, and they hit each other up for money for disadvantaged youth. That's impressive.
Yes, it is.
Why aren't we doing that in the church?
We need to do that. And Monsignor, I can't thank you enough for visiting with us today and telling us your history here and your thoughts. At 55 plus years in the priesthood, it's magnificent. We can't thank you for all the energy and direction that you have given the church and the diocese. So thank you for being with us. And we'll come back maybe in another 55 years and interview you again. How's that be?
Well, I did want to toss in there that I had 2 sisters, nuns, an aunt and a great aunt, and 5 first cousins were nuns.
Well, you must have got a blessing from the Pope when all that happened. Again, Monsignor, thank you so much. It's been my pleasure talking to you. And we will see you again soon, I'm sure.
Okay, good.
Thank you.